What's up, everybody? You are listening to the Think Big podcast. I'm your host, Ayelet Polonsky, also known as your manifestation mentor. This podcast is designed to help you create a manifestation mindset by learning how to think big. You'll learn how to use your thoughts to co-create your reality. Let's get into today's episode. In this week's Parshat Vayera, Hashem tests Avraham big time. Hashem says to Avraham, he calls out his name, Avraham, to which Avraham responds, "Here I am." And God said, "Please take your son, your only one, whom you love, Yitzchak, and go away to the land of Moriah, and bring him up there for a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I will tell you." Implying here that God is telling Abraham, go there and sacrifice your son. I'm sorry, but what? For all of the mamas out there, try to imagine that the infinite creator calls out your name and says, "Hey you, I know you've been tested already 9 times before, and that they've been really big tests, like matters of life or death, and that you're probably fed up with all my challenges by now, but I've got just one more test for you. This time, you will take your child and slaughter him. This will truly prove your faith in me." I don't know about you, but my mind would start to go to some really dark places. I'd be putting up a major fight with God. But we see here, Avraham's response when God calls out to him is, "Hineni, here I am." How often do we put up a fight against God when we come across any challenge in our own lives? And how often do we scream out, "Hineni, here I am"? Parshat Vayera is a lesson for us to show up and say, "I got this," to all of life's challenges. And as difficult a task as this may be, today we're going to speak about why the current challenges in your life are meant just for you, and how you may even be able to perceive them as good. Rabbi Beton brings down a beautiful teaching by Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk, who teaches us that the whole challenge of Akedat Yitzchak was one of emunah, faith. God's goal wasn't to get Avraham to kill his son, but rather to see how Avraham would show up and respond to the challenge. Hashem knew, after all, that Avraham would be the great-great-great-grandfather of monotheism and of the Jewish people, so he had to ensure that the lineage being passed down came from the source of true emunah, true faith. So Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk shares that Avraham had a moment of questioning Hashem's ways. In his mind, Avraham had thoughts that came from his lower self, the self that tends to get caught up or entangled with self-doubt and fear or self-sabotage. Obviously, God always knows best, but in moments of panic and fear, our minds get caught up in their own circus. This is what happened to Avraham. He began thinking to himself, will God change his mind? How could God do this to two of the greatest people who would pass on the torch of spreading God's holy name for eternity? He thought to himself things like, I already passed 9 major tests. Why would he give me another one? God, why would you do this to me? How could you do this to me? The thing is, true faith is about letting go of your own ideas of how things need to be figured out. It's letting go of the need to have the solution right here, right now. Hashem is always transcending that. We must realize that every test, obstacle, challenge, every trial and tribulation we're currently facing in our lives today is for our ultimate good and benefit, even if we can't see it in the moment. And yes, this takes a high level of faith to tap into. But this is the inner space we must carry to manifest our heart's deepest desires. The great Jewish master, the Baal Shem Tov, teaches that when you have that level of emunah, of faith, anything your heart desires manifests instantly. When Yitzchak was preparing to be slaughtered by his father, he tells his father, "Bind me tight so that I don't flinch," because he wanted to make sure it would be a kosher slaughter. We learn here that Yitzchak saying, "Bind me tighter," was his own way of saying, "All right, Hashem, all right, God, you've got a test for me too here. Well, hineni, here I am." In last week's Parsha, Lech Lecha, Rashi points out that when God tells Avraham, Lech Lecha, the translation is, go for yourself, implying go do this for your own benefit. In this Parsha, Vayera, Hashem tells Avraham again, Lech Lecha, for yourself, this time to a land called Moriah, and sacrifice your son. The words Lech Lecha here imply that somehow this act would turn out to be for Avraham's own benefit. This teaches us that any obstacle we are currently experiencing is for our own good. As a result of Avraham passing these tests, he ended up being the father of the Jewish people. Every single obstacle is for our own good. It's there to serve a purpose, to take us from one madrega, from one level of awareness and actualization to the next level of self-awareness and self-actualization. Nothing that happens to you isn't in fact happening for you. I always say that challenges are reroutes to an even greater destination. The problem is we tend to get so caught up in our own fears, doubts, worries, anxieties. We get so caught up in our heads that we fail to notice that Hashem places the solution right in front of us all along. Another passage in Parshat Vayera has to do with Lot running from Sodom. One of the angels that was prepared to spare the lives of Lot and his family clearly instructed them, run for your lives and don't look back. Run, 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 and don't look back or you will be destroyed. The Baal Shem Tov's interpretation of don't look back is profound. When Lot was told to not look back, it was a lesson for all of us today. We, each and every one of us, have experiences, traumas, memories from our past that keep us stuck in a place of self-doubt, of regret. It keeps us caught up in the mindset that we shouldn't be proud of ourselves, or we're not worthy, or we're not enough. So the Baal Shem Tov says that when Lot is told not to look back, it's teaching us today that we are meant to focus on the present. Who am I today and where am I headed? Rabbi Beton shared a great point. He said that without actually looking into memory, we would not actually see here and now the memory of the past itself. Show me where your doubt lives. Show me where your memory lives. I can't see it. It's not here in the physical plane. It exists nowhere but in your memory. So the Baal Shem Tov is showing us that the Torah in this Parsha teaches us not to look back at the things that we're not proud of. And the best part about the past is it's over. It doesn't actually exist. Now, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination inside each and every one of us, will come in and try to convince us to look back. That's its job. It wants you to stay stuck. It wants you to remain unevolved. We have to learn how to deal with the Yetzer Hara and recognize what its tactics are, because it has its own intelligence. And Rebbe Nachman says that when someone falls to a place of sin, the purpose of the Yetzer Hara in causing a person to sin is not in the sin itself, but rather it wants to cause a person to fall into despair. It wants to cause a person to associate with the guilt and negative emotions that are associated with our sinning. It wants to cause a person to identify with the sin and see themselves as a sinner. It wants us to identify with our trauma from the past. And when a person weakens as a result of this, they cannot connect with God. And this is the intention of the Yetzer Hara. This is why we are told not to look back. When Avraham was preparing to take his son's life, the Torah states, quote, "And Avraham raised his eyes and saw, behold, a ram caught in the thicket by its horns." Regarding the ram being caught in the thicket being a dense group of bushes or trees, Chazal teach us that the ram was running towards Avraham, but then suddenly the Satan, the devil, grasped it and confused it among the trees so as to hold it back from Avraham, ultimately wanting to prevent Avraham from replacing his son with the ram. The Ramchal teaches us that the underlying meaning here is that whenever the opportunity arises for a tikkun, for a spiritual fixing or evolution of our soul, leading us towards greater levels of kedusha, of spirituality, immediately what will happen is the external, unholy, evil forces will jump in and try to prevent this by covering up the opportunity with a parallel, impure force. That's deep. So when you find yourself making progress towards your spiritual development, your connection to the divine, or your own personal self-actualization, and you notice that the obstacles getting in your way become greater, rest assured it's a sign you are on the right path. These are your own Avrahamic tests, placed before you intentionally by God to help you propel you to even greater heights, to help propel you towards your destiny. So ask yourself, what am I currently going through right now? Which obstacles and challenges are in my way? What limiting beliefs are clouding my judgment? How can I stop and acknowledge that it may just be for my own benefit? How can I get out of my own head, take a deep breath, and realize that Hashem has a solution just for me? And from this place of knowing, can you scream out, Hineni, here I am. I can do this. Shabbat Shalom.
If you enjoyed this episode and would like more manifestation inspiration, tune in every Monday for a new episode. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on an episode. What you get out of this show means the world to me, so I invite you to leave an honest review. If you want more, you can follow me on social media at Ayelet Polonsky. I also have a number of virtual courses to offer if you're ready to take this material to the next level and start embodying a manifestation mindset. I teach you how to heal past trauma, experience the most joy out of life, and rewrite your future so you can feel good more often. Simply head on over to ayeletpolonsky.com for a variety of resources you can start taking advantage of immediately. See you next week. And as always, think big and happy manifesting.